You already see the volunteers are now starting to arrive. Over here is the truck from Metro Park Clearing Group, part of the MMDA. They're handing out equipment, tongs, rakes, things like that. Over here you have some medics. They brought an MMDA ambulance with them. There's a registration area. Volunteers just need to sign upon arrival. There's no need for prior coordination. And yeah, things are starting to warm up. And in comes the heavy equipment from the DPWH. And the MMDA just gave some face masks. So here's the mask. This is the first time I've seen the MMDA give out something like this. And they also have some gloves. These are for volunteers. This is where you see the magic happen. This thing can actually go in water. Here you'll see this man has a raft made of bamboo and styrofoam. He said he's going to go out and catch some fish. And here he goes now, paddling his way out. He said he doesn't have to go too far to catch the fish. And you can see the volunteers are already starting to swamp the beach along with MMDA employees. And you can see some people actually brought their own rigs. The MMDA one's a metal, this one's plastic on the end. So they're sorting through, leaving the stones, taking the plastic. It's amazing how much work you can get done when you have enough people. Of course, all those in blue shirts are from MMDA. You see the volunteers have been given their equipment, tongs, rakes, bags, and inside the registration area they can get gloves and a mask. It's very organized today. What you might have noticed is that a lot of the volunteers are actually students from a local school, Jose Abad Santos. So over here you'll see a couple of people from public safety, MMDA. They even have a defib with them, a life pack defib. Let's take a look.
Call for help now. Remove all clothing from patient's chest.
I also brought my own box of goodies. If we take a look inside here, I have a net which I want to test later, the Estero. Lower this down and try and pick up trash. We'll talk more about that later. Some panda salad. And then here, more interestingly, is a med kit. This was given by Mercury Drug to support the cleanup efforts. Actually, I told them that I'm planning to set up a very small team of volunteers that will go around and try and clear hard to reach places. And I'm trying to put together equipment. And one of the things I wanted was a first aid kit, just in case any of the volunteers get injured. So this is actually full of goodies. Let me open it up and show you. We've got all sorts of things, basically everything that you'd need for basic first aid. So very nice, a Mercury Drug to give this one, plus a lot of other supplies on top of this. If you're wondering about that heavy equipment that they took out earlier, it's actually being pulled by a MMDA tugboat to Manila Bay because there's no access there. So they have to take it into the water here and then tug it all the way over to Manila Bay. So we're going to go out now on this boat and see them in action doing the desilting. Over here you'll see a patrol boat from the Philippine Coast Guard, always keeping an eye on the waters. So you'll see they were able to catch up with the heavy equipment being tugged along. You have the Capitan Felix over here, Philippine Coast Guard also roaming around, keeping an eye on things. And in fact, just behind us now, there's another little Coast Guard boat over here. And I just realized what I've been calling a tugboat is actually the old river bus ferry along Pasig River. I didn't even realize this is the old one, and it's being used to pull along this. It's good that it's still working. I'm not sure, but I think this one has to leave because it might get stuck here. It's not deep enough, and I think they're going to use the crane to pull themselves along. And you'll see here on the boat they're also helping out. They're removing this so that the machine can pass through. And if you hadn't noticed, there's a lot of volunteers here on the Manila Bay front cleaning up trash again. Of course, they've cleared this area so the heavy machinery can work without, you know, risking anyone, because they're doing the desilting process and then dumping it there in those containers. So yeah, you know, there's a lot of work going on, and this is every day. This isn't just weekends, it's not just Saturday, this is every day. The volunteer effort is now every day. Look how small the people look next to the machinery. I saw the DPWH have really nice green jackets. And just before we go back to Baseco, the MMDA guys will be running this set of floats for the DPWH. In fact, a couple of the DPWH guys came on the boat and they'll be the ones to do it since they know exactly where it needs to go. There's jumping fish behind us and they are jumping really high, like 1 meter. It's incredible. And back on Baseco Beach, you'll see an army of MMDA taking their collective trash back over to the main point where it will be taken away. And somewhat familiar with other popular beaches, you'll now find vendors here selling and renting inflatables, ice creams, even some cooked food. So it's really becoming popular. And I guess ultimately this is what it's all about, giving the beaches back to the people, letting them enjoy the beach, letting them swim safely, although it's not quite safe yet. And yeah, it's really amazing, and I think people will really appreciate this effort. And for anyone wondering about the stats today, there were 193 volunteers, 200 MMDA, and they collected 302 sacks of trash from Baseco Beach. And you'll see that while the volunteers are busy clearing the Estero, the Manila Bay, everything like that, there are actually people building over the waterways. This is next to 168 Mall. They're building some kind of bridge here. Someone sent this to me and said, is this really allowed? I said, I'm not sure, because you can see it is disturbing the flow of water. Obviously all the trash is bunching up against it. This will soon be built. Actually, they've been progressing very quickly. I think this is only a week and they've nearly completed it. So we're now back on Alvarado Street, and this is Estero de Magdalena, and it doesn't look too bad compared to before. You can see that someone has installed a garbage trap over here. It might be the PRRC. They're the ones that normally install these kind of traps. That means that all the garbage pulls up in one place. It's much easier to clean up later. But there is still some garbage here, and this gives me an opportunity to test my idea with this net, because normally what you have to do is send someone out there on a raft or a boat. That's very difficult for the average volunteer. So the idea is very simple. Something like this is actually intended for gardening, and I've tied some paracord to it so it can be lowered down. If that's not strong enough, the other idea is to use a tray like this. Now the only thing I'm wondering is whether this will sink and allow it to pick up trash. It might just float on top, meaning you have to tie a weight to it. So that's what this is about. I'm not planning to do a big cleanup today. I just want to do some testing for future and maybe, you know, find some solutions that other volunteers could reproduce. So I would say over here is about 12 foot going down. So I've lowered my net and I want to try and catch that thing. So we have to go under it and then bring it up. So it did sink okay. That's a good start. Oh yeah, there you go. It really does work. I was worried it wouldn't sink under the trash. So actually it works a lot simpler than I expected. It really sinks quite easily, and this is something that other volunteers could replicate easily. You could even make a bigger version. Now of course there's only a little bit of trash here, but if I went over there, for example, I could collect that, and then the river warriors wouldn't have to go out here on a boat. And this is just part of my bigger plan, like I mentioned earlier in the video, that I want to put together a small volunteer team that can do things like this, that can break away from the main group. And this is the kind of thing I want to come up with, other solutions for getting stuff out the Estero, you know, to make things simpler. So here's a simple prototype. I only tied it on 2 ends. I just want to see if it sinks, basically, because a lot of people have been contacting me saying they want to clean up but they don't have the tools, they don't have the equipment. What you might need is a piece of string and a tray like this. So let's try. Okay, this one floats, so you can see this would be no good unless we put a weight on the bottom of it. So as a simple test, I put a rock in here and we'll see if this manages to make it sink. Okay, that worked. So if you made a secure weight, you could actually use it. Let's see if we can capture that cup. Oh, there you go, we caught 2 of them. Now of course you'd want to tie this on all ends and you'd want to make the weight secure so it doesn't fall out, but proof of concept. Like I said, this is really just testing some ideas to see what would work, and to show people what would work, because sometimes people say, hey, I want to help but I don't have any equipment, I don't have any money, I don't want to go into the water, but I live near an Estero. So I'm trying to come up with, you know, different options that people could try and replicate themselves. Even 1 or 2 people, you go over there, you could probably clean that up by yourselves. You wouldn't even have to go in the water. Either make or buy something like this, maybe a much bigger version. This is a little bit small, but they work. Both of them work just fine.